What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's going on? So, welcome to I Was in This House. I'm your host, Everett Lapel, and it's been a good week. It's been a good week. Lots happened. Lots of banter and chatter in our industry. It's been a very busy week for that. So, anyway, tonight's guest is entrenched in the industry. He is one of a kind. I'm gonna bring him on here, Mr. Antonelli, Dan Antonelli. What's going on, man?
What's up, my man?
Hey, did you like how in the post I made for this episode, I stepped out of the box because my color palette for this podcast is that like sea foam kind of green color, and I totally stepped outside the box there, and I ended up going with the black and yellow, and I was like, hey, let me go with the black and yellow. Let me see, but so I did that for you, Dan.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
And by the way, just so you know, Dan, you say where you podcasting from right now?
I am in Brook Hill Beach, Delaware, right now at my shore house.
Yeah, see the shore. See, this is the thing about when you're from Jersey, New York, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Bronx, whatever. All right, if you're from that area of the world, right? I saw this map the other day, and it's like what people call the ocean everywhere you go, and it's like beach, 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 and it goes to New Jersey, New York, goes shore.
Sure. And you always go down to the shore. You never go up to the shore.
You're never going to go up. Even if you're going up, like if you were from Philly and you were going, like, let's say LBI, you'd kind of be going up a little bit. No, you're going down to the shore. DTS, baby. Yeah. DTS, GTL, Gym Tan Laundry.
Yeah.
So Dan, for those people that are listening, obviously in our industry, people know who you are for the most part. I get a lot of listeners who, may not know who you are. So Dan, who the heck are you?
So I run a company called Kick Charge Creative. We are a branding and digital marketing company based in New Jersey. We have 60 employees right now. I started the company 30 years ago. This is actually our 30th year, which is kind of cool. And I started lettering trucks for home service contractors when I was 14 or 15 years old. And then just fell in love with that idea of working with contractors and seeing my work out in the wild, and the joy and the satisfaction I got from a kid is something I still experience, that's 45 years later, 40 years later. So it's pretty amazing that I'm still doing something that I was really passionate about that many years ago.
There's that picture you shared from 1980 something, and you're in Staten Island, and I can see it because my dad had a truck, and I remember it was like an Econoline van, and it was like stenciled, painted, stenciled on the side. A lot has happened since then.
Yeah. A lot of brands, a lot of companies have passed through. I think at this point we've done the branding for over 3,000 home service companies, which is pretty wild. We've got work all over the world, which is also just blows in my mind. Like Ellen Roy just came back from Australia, and she was at a company that we just finished the branding for. So I got to see pictures of the new brand we just created for this company called Network out in Australia, pretty big home service company. And it just blows my mind that we're doing stuff like that.
Were you at that? You were at that Service Titan event in it was a Service Titan event in Australia.
There. Ellen Rohr was there, and she was showing me pictures of the van. We just literally launched it like a month ago, and I hadn't even seen any of the pictures of the finished van she had, and she was texting me pictures, and it's just wild to see the extent of the impact and how far-reaching our impact is. And it just blows my mind, so I still come from the notion sometimes that, and I used to say this all the time when I first started, I'm just a schmuck in my basement, doing stuff. And now there's all these people that I'm surrounded with, such amazing talent. And, just to see the impact on a daily basis of our work is pretty special, and something I'm still obviously really proud of and very passionate about.
Yeah, but what do you attribute that to? Because I think about this in like two different lenses, right? Like there's this like business aspect of it where, you know, you've gotten really good at understanding the business world and what attracts people and what makes people attracted to certain things. And then I also think about it from a perspective of like you're that artist who's sitting in the basement, who's, you
Yeah.
know, like
It's funny. I was talking with Dustin and not Dustin, Justin and Ryan from Chirp the other day, right? And I'm talking to those guys, and they were asking a similar question, and I said something to the effect of, I think it's a sickness. And they said, well, what do you mean it's a sickness? And I said, I've been obsessed with lettering. I've been obsessed with branding, and I've been obsessed with how things look on a vehicle since I was like 14 years old, right? And so I can't go out in the real world and look at things the same way most people look at things. So anything that comes across my line of sight, whether it's online on Facebook or whether I'm driving in a car and I see another truck wrap or I see branding for another home service company, immediately I just go into the mode of what's good about it, what's bad about it, how would we have done it differently. And I think that obsession of always looking at things through that lens and always trying to analyze and assess and say, hey, what could we have done differently, or why does that not work? And so it's, my wife is used to it by this point. Her and I together, 30 years at this point almost. And for her to take a drive. What's that?
newlyweds.
Yeah, yeah. So for her to
Newlyweds.
take a drive with me, like we were driving down to Delaware, we're on 95, and she's taking pictures of truck wraps as we're driving down. I'm like, oh, get a picture of that one because that one's got, really poor contrast, and I can use this to illustrate to my guys on some lesson. So she's really gotten used to it. But I think that level of obsession with perfecting my craft is why we've been successful. And I've always lived by the notion that, nothing that you do today you should ever think is good enough for tomorrow. And I've just never been complacent. So, I'll post something on Facebook and people say, oh my God, like that's my favorite, or that's amazing, right? And then, you take that and you're like, okay, that's cool. But then you're like, oh shit, like tomorrow I gotta one up that. Like I gotta do better than that right there. And once you
Mm.
start thinking of the mindset that what you've done today is the best that you can ever do, then everything after is down, right? So I just can't get that in my mindset that I'm at a pinnacle or at the top of my game, because as soon as I feel that way, then there's no way to go but down. But so I'm always striving, I'm always looking to improve, I always want to be better. So like I said, when somebody says, oh my God, like, this is the best thing you've ever done, or this is my new favorite, and you're like, okay, that's cool, and you enjoy it for the moment, and then I'm like, shit, tomorrow we gotta get better.
Yeah, well, I think a lack of complacency or never being able to rest because you can always be better is a curse that people like you and I both actually have. And actually, my wife called me out on it the other day. She's like, "When is it? And what's never enough? Just you got to keep." I don't know what to tell you. You married the wrong guy. What can I say? It is what it is, bro. You got to. I just can't stop. So HVA Chicks Coalition says, Dan, Brian Henge and I had a free class for the business owners in my coalition yesterday, and Brian quoted you so many times, and I saw so much growth in him since following your direction.
Awesome.
So cool.
Love it. Love it. Love it, man. That's awesome. Thank
Very
you.
cool, man. Very, very cool. Like, okay, but like, I'm fascinated by your journey, man, because it's like, I feel like you're just See, this is what I love about it, right? Okay, how'd you grow up? Tell people
So
how you grew
I
up.
grew up in Staten Island, New York. My dad was a blue collar guy. He was an electrician. He worked actually, and this company or this government agency, Everett. He worked for the Port Authority. So he worked for Port Authority of New York. Was an
Right.
electrician there, and did a lot of side hustles. Like he actually did roofing. He did electrical work on the side, and taught me a lot about obviously the trades. So I would go with him on jobs and I would help him with some of that stuff. But he was also very creative and he was also artistic, and he also turned me on to doing some stuff with signs. And he just taught me that value of hustle. That and I tell the story, not so often, but Tommy Mello was at my office. A couple of years ago, and I have this bike that's hanging in my office, and it's a bike that I bought when I was 15 years old, and it's an Italian racing bike. It's made by this bicycle company called Pinarello, and Pinarello is like Ferrari, right? So it's the best of the best. And when I was 15, I was really into cycling, like I still am today. And I remember going past the bike shop with my old man, and I said to him, I'm like, Dad, I really want to get that bike. And he said, okay, work for it. And so like I saved all my money. Like I did a paper route in Staten Island. I did all these side jobs. So
What's a
that's when you
paper
deliver
route?
newspapers, right? That's when they have that's when
No,
they
I
have those
know.
things that people read like physically in their hands, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's still people
yeah,
that read
yeah, yeah.
newspapers,
So
by the way. There are still people. And by the way, for people that don't know, the Port Authority, okay, is its own government agency in between New
yeah,
York and New Jersey. It actually has its own legislative body. It is not governed by either the state of New York or the state of New Jersey. If you read about it, it is
yeah, it's great.
bonkers that it is not touched by either governmental agency.
Yeah.
It's very
So
strange.
so I saved my money and I bought that bicycle and I remember showing up to a race at like 16 and that bike at the time was like $1,500 or $1,600, which was a shit ton of money in 85, right? For a bicycle. And and
Oh my God. Dude, that was a shit ton of money for a used car back then.
and I rode that bike for a long time. I had it for many years, and then in 2000, I actually restored the bike, repainted it to the original colors because it had some scratches and things, and it hangs on my wall. And it's just a good reminder of the value of hard work and working towards something that you'd like to achieve. And sadly, my dad died in 99, so he didn't get to see much of this journey. Like I was
Mm,
only 2 years into it full time at that point. He only saw a little bit of it,
yeah.
but he taught me a lot about that, and he taught me.
Back then, was it still all
So
branding
back then it was
based
mainly
stuff?
lettering. So I would do truck lettering. I would do pinstriping. So I did a lot of pinstriping. Like you know the cars in
Yeah.
Staten Island in '85, the Monte Carlos, and and and
Would you do it? Would you do it for
oh
people
yeah, of
and
course. So,
businesses?
so you
Like you weren't
pinstripe their
picky?
car, and that guy's name was Tony.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Monte Carlo, man.
Yeah,
Beautiful with
yeah.
the pinstripe
So
going
that
down like
guy's
that.
name was Tony, and his girlfriend's name was Maria, and you'd put Maria on the door, and you put Tony on his side, and
Oh
some Playboy
man.
bunnies on the back, or champagne glasses clinking.
It was Brenda and Eddie,
So
by the way.
so
It was
so
Brenda and
yeah,
Eddie.
I was pinstriping stuff probably when I was 16, 17. And again, like I said, I was obsessed. I was obsessed with lettering. Like my friends would be going out after high school and hey, let's go out, let's party. And I'm like, nah, dude, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna letter some alphabets. And they're like, huh? You're gonna letter some alphabets? I'm like, well, yeah, like I gotta know how to do lettering, right? So like that, it was just a different mindset for me, and I was just obsessed with it. I was obsessed with lettering. And then I got a job in a sign shop in Staten Island, and that guy changed my life. Like that guy taught me so much about layout, so much about composition. His handiwork is in so much of our work today. The lessons that he taught me,
Mm.
and that experience you can't replicate. And I think that's sometimes the difference of people that are doing this work today, versus like how I learned how to do it. Like I learned by lettering something on the side of the van and stepping back, and if I couldn't read it, I would wipe it off and start over. Like, so you learned about legibility just by the physicality of actually hand painting something on the side of a truck. And that experience is very difficult to replicate on a screen. Like, it just doesn't translate.
In a computer world, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about what's your thoughts on that? Like leg up, like for instance, people that like learned in an
Right.
analog world but adapted the digital aspect of it, I think are
Yeah.
way
And
ahead
it's
of the
hard,
game.
like I said, you just can't match that experience. It's very much something that, unless you've really done it, like it's just, I don't know, you can't replicate it. So I was fortunate to work under
How do you train that now? How do you train that now
this.
then? Like with
So
your staff?
one of my lead illustrators and brand designers that's been with me over 20 years, his dad was a sign painter. So he grew up around that same trade. His dad was probably one of my idols actually growing up, which is the irony of it. Like his dad, his name is Jeff Devey, and lettering artist like unparalleled. Like, and so I admired his work growing up, seeing his dad in the magazines. And then I wound up hiring his son to work for me because he was an amazing illustrator. So one of my other illustrators comes from a sign background also. And then the rest of the guys don't come from that background, but they've been exposed to it. Actually, another guy comes from, so four of my guys come from the sign background, actually. And the other guys we just teach, and we do a lot of training to educate them on some of those things. But honestly, like, you can't really get a job with us unless you're really good at that stuff to begin with. So,
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts about that. So now you've done a lot of creative, like, do you sit and like think of brands, and then like when a company comes to you and says, okay, I'm looking to rebrand, and you start asking the questions and you say to yourself, oh my gosh, we came up with this idea and I think it's perfect for your business? Or like, is it always sort of like a custom, like what's the creative
yeah,
process
so
there?
95% of the time, it's a very strategic process, right? So you're trying to solve a problem that home service company has, whether it's just a bad name, whether it's a bad brand or a bad logo or a bad truck wrap. You're trying to figure out a way that you can design something that will live in someone's mind rent free and be able to be recalled later on. And I think that that's the part that people misunderstand what branding really is. And branding is essentially just trying to rent space in someone's mind. And how do we do that? How do we build a brand
Mm.
that someone will recall later on? That's why it makes me crazy sometimes, people putting QR codes on truck wraps and thinks that that's an amazing idea. Put a QR code on your truck wrap. And it's like, because they think truck wraps are point of purchase or they're calls to action, and they're not. They're brand building. It's the bottom line is 98% of the people do not need your services when they see that truck on the road. Okay. But how do I live in their
Mm.
minds for a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now, when they need an air conditioning repair? How do I make it so that they're going on and they're typing my brand name instead of typing in air conditioning repair near me? Because air conditioning repair near me is going to cost me a shit ton of money. That keyword. If I want to bid on that keyword,
Yeah.
it's going to cost me. But if it's my brand name, it's not going to cost me hardly anything, right? Because they already know who I am. They already know what they're looking for. And of course, it's going to be easier to rank for my brand name than it is for a generic search term.
Mm. Yeah, I sat through a seminar with you, and about 3-4 years ago, and I remember you posting statistics on like pre and post
Mm-hmm.
doing the brand, and actually, and I would have never actually thought about that. I knew that brand was always important, but I would have never thought that how large of an impact it could potentially be. I mean, I think when people rebrand though, there's also other things they do.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes like they
Yeah.
implement processes. So like sometimes it's like it's attributed towards the success, but like how much is attributed? Probably a good amount, right? But it's probably difficult to quantify. Regardless, it's a huge
Yeah.
piece of the puzzle. And and with that, so now, okay, so and I messaged the other day, I posted on Facebook, and I did this because you're very vocal about the things that you've created, and then having people then steal basically your intellectual property, and it's happened a lot. I mean, it's probably happened more times than you even know. You only see it when you see it, right? Um, Talk to me about that. Tell me, like, what, like, you're upset about it. I mean, you literally a physic. I mean, you get
Well,
upset about it, which
yeah,
anybody
I
would,
mean,
right?
first off, you have to understand too, it's not my intellectual property any longer. Okay, so the art doesn't belong to me; it belongs to the client that I sold it to. So when you
Gotcha.
have a lot of people following me, a lot of people know of us, know of our work, know of our style, and inevitably somebody that rips something off. Another person will take a screenshot of it or send it to us and just say, hey, this looks familiar, or this looks exactly like this other company. And so, I've always done my best to try to educate people on the dangers of, basically copyright infringement or trademark infringement. I've done my best to try to teach people how to avoid such scenarios and where they sometimes originate from. And it's just sometimes it's just laziness. Sometimes it's just blatant though. And I think that that's the part too that sometimes just feels shitty because I feel like I've done a lot to try to help people understand how important it is to respect someone else's intellectual property, and then to
Mhm.
have it sort of, stolen, and then and in a lot of instances it becomes a very expensive lesson too. And I don't get off by having people or my clients send cease and desist to people. Like that doesn't make me happy. That makes me sad. It makes me sad for whoever created it in the first place. And then it makes me sad too that it's just an unnecessary cost that business has to spend. We've had instances where guys have literally ripped off a mascot and put it on, 6 or 7 different wrap trucks and on their website and on their uniforms, and it's a federally
Mm.
trademarked mascot. The same exact one, and all that stuff went in the garbage, and
Here,
it's sad.
here's what I wonder. Here's what I wonder. Um, so I'm going to ask you a question that has a short answer to it. So if you had to give 1 year as to which you felt like, okay, like my business went from like X to Y, like boom, like it went from like, A to Z, like in that 1 year, what year would that be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would say 6 or 7 years ago is is
Okay.
when
So we're talking,
really started gaining a lot of traction in home services.
so like 19, like 2018,
Yeah,
19, 20
probably
ish,
right
18,
when we
19.
rebranded,
Okay.
when I renamed the agency, because we didn't always used to be called Kick Charge. We were called Graphic Designs. That was the name of the company. I named it when I was 27 years old. I thought it was a great name because I did graphic designs and I did signs. So I thought, oh, graphic D dash signs, like that'll be cool. And it was awful. So
Wow. Isn't that so funny? You know what they say? The last car a mechanic ever works on is
exactly.
his own.
So
Yeah. Dan Baker says 2 Dans make a
thank you,
right.
Dan. Absolutely.
All right. So the reason why I asked that is because, and I think this is amazing, by the way. So we were already at a point in 2017, 18, 19, already at a point where, listen, the ability to get like cheap logos and like all sorts of stuff was already, the bag was out. You go to websites and you get a generator done and like, like a
Yeah, yeah.
logo generator and like, boom. Like, okay. So do you find it interesting that the biggest upturn of your business was in literally the brunt of being able to do it on your own? Well, you didn't need to hire a Dan Antonelli at Kick Charge anymore. You ever think
Well,
about that?
some people have also said it's my fault, right? They've basically said it's really your fault, Dan, that everyone steals your work because you wrote books, because you speak on stage about it, because I mean, I wrote for a sign magazine for 25 years. I was in over 100 articles that I wrote about the topic of branding and about truck wraps and effective wrap design, like all these topics. And so some people have really said, Dan, it's your fault. Like you're to blame for people stealing your work, which is an odd thing to sort of say. But on the other hand, it's like I understand why they may feel that. Well, dude, like if you didn't talk so much about branding, nobody would steal your work. And I'm like, okay, but like, does that even make sense? Honestly, like, so it is.
Right, but what is it? Yeah, so I want to try to tie it back because I'm trying to figure out like what do you think? Why do you think it is? You think if people get too confused when they're like sitting there like trying, like there's so many options, like you know what? Fuck this. I'm just gonna go and hire a guy to do it that knows what they're doing. Is that what you think? Or do you think it's because you got so much traction and the internet sort of, I mean, you had branded a bunch of really successful companies and then all of a sudden it was like, bam, I got to go to Dan. I mean, there's no one in any industry. Okay. There's sales coaches, there's training organizations, there's IT, CPAs, all sorts of stuff in home services. I mean, like literally any service that you want in home services, we have it all. Okay. The list is endless, but in your category, I don't know if this sounds flattering or not, it ends and it pretty much starts and ends with you. So like now I'm wondering, like there's obviously a busy market out there. Like what do you think happened?
I mean, again, just kept on putting out really, really good work. kept on really getting great results, great success stories. I mean, Ken Goodrich, Gettle, I mean, was a pivotal brand for us. Tommy Mello's brand, A1 Garage, very big brand for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So you landed the two. I mean, you did the two biggest brand names. Period. That I mean, look, there's very few companies in the country that you can say are at that level, right? Maybe Hiller. Ironically, you'd probably disagree with AJ Perry. They're a $110 million branch in Jersey.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
I
they do
don't,
a tremendous amount of
yeah.
business.
Yeah,
There's no
let's just say
branding. It's
I would do that.
it's just the name on
Yeah,
the side of the truck.
I
That's
would
all it
do that
is.
one a little bit
Yeah.
different. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, it was funny because I remember you saying, like, here's the rule of thumb. You never name your company with the name or like initials or anything like that. And I'm thinking to myself, like, now it does have a good ring to it, right? So it's like really interesting that that one company happens to be like the biggest company like in the entire
Yeah,
Northeast.
yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah.
listen, definitely doing Tommy's also even opened up that vertical to us way more than anything else. So when we did A1, Tommy was at 40 million. I think so that was like 5 years ago, and I think they're at 300 million now or 350, something like that. But it also was interesting too because within that vertical, it wasn't very prevalent. So you didn't see a lot of garage door guys investing in branding. Um, and then Tommy
No.
invited me to speak on stage at his first events that he was doing for the garage door industry. And I almost call that the first graduating class because out of that class, we branded about 15 of those companies. And years later, like to see how well that they're doing is also really, really cool. We did the branding for Aaron Gainer at
What's your
Eco, also another huge guy.
Eco Plumbers is huge. What about your biggest failure?
Biggest failure from a brand perspective?
Biggest failure. It'd be interesting to see, and I don't think you're going to answer this question because I think it would be tough for you to answer. But I almost wonder if there's like even like from way back in the day, if there was like a brand that you were like really not happy with, like maybe you
Yeah,
gave several options and then they decided to go
there's
another
definitely
route.
examples of that where the finished product was not what we felt would be in that client's best interest. And we can only advocate so much. At the end of the day, it is your logo. I am going to fight as hard as I possibly can to push you in the right direction. Sometimes, and it's very rare, but sometimes I don't get my way. And we hate when we have to give a client something that they're asking for if it's not something we know that they need. So there's a few of those that are out there. Those ones typically don't make the highlight reel, and they're frustrating for us because at some point you're like, well, why did you hire us then? Like, if you know so much about branding, you should have just hire a graphic designer and sit behind him and tell him exactly what you want. But
Do you ever walk away from client? Like, do you ever like even if people are willing to pay, do you ever go, you know what?
sometimes
We
we
can't work
do
with
it
you.
more so on the onset if they are very deliberate in insisting that they must have something as part of their brand, even if maybe it's name, maybe it's the direction that they want us to go. And I know that where they're asking us to go will never lead them. Like even the story of Amanda at Grasshopper, like Amanda August came to me and said, Dan, I need you to rebrand PMA Comfort Solutions. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to take your money and rebrand PMA Comfort because where you want to go, we will never get there as PMA Comfort. So you either change the name or I'm sure there's someone else that would be happy to take your money. I'm just not going to do it because I can't take money again for something I believe isn't going to work. It's just not how I fly.
That's good. Shows a lot of ethics. Shows a lot of
And on that
integrity.
topic too, Everett, like I get so many people who love our truck wraps, and then they're like, "Hey, we want you to do a truck wrap for us. Here's our logo," and they send me something, and there's zero chance that what they have as a brand will ever function correctly on the side of a truck. And I'll have that same conversation. Say, "Listen, this won't work. Here's why it won't work. And if you would like to rebrand, we'd be happy to work with you and do it that way. But if you insist on keeping this logo, I can't take the job. And I'm sure there's someone else that's going to be more than happy to take your money, but I will not take money from something that will not deliver a corresponding ROI. It's just not how we roll.
That's a good thought here. I got to pause for 1 second, guys. I appreciate everybody in the live chat and anybody who's going to listen on audio or later on. I do have a sponsor, Cooper and Hunter, HVAC equipment, VRF systems, ductless mini split systems. They just came out with a whole new line of equipment. They're also the sponsor for the New York Yankees. Check them out, Cooper and Hunter. They're distributed all over the country now. And they actually have a little
with BTU capacity that ranges between.
Oh, here we go.
Cooper and Hunter's new peak unit runs efficiently up to 19 SEER 2. With BTU capacity that ranges between 18 to 55,000 for indoor and outdoor units. Compared to a traditional gas furnace, Peak's revolutionary design is ready to step in without a hassle, thanks to its adaptive multi-voltage. True high-performance hyper units provide a 100% heating output at -13 degrees. Looking inside the unit, the new M-Coil is highly efficient and provides a better airflow that reflects in a higher static pressure. Our Smart Kit is included, giving you access to control your device from the comfort of your phone. Peak stands for powerful, efficient, auto voltage detection, and quiet. To learn more, visit our website or talk to your local distributor. Cooper and Hunter, addicted to comfort.
Thanks for that, guys. Yeah. So I didn't realize I had the
anyway. You said something else, by the way, too, when you said something like, you get mad at that. You get mad when things are ripped off. What I want to say about that, though, too, is it's.
Oh, I didn't say I get mad. I said you get mad.
You said you get mad.
As you should.
But the other part that makes me more angry is when I see work that's being put out there that will never work for that contractor. Okay. So what I feel about that is that if you're going to play in this space and you're going to sell branding to home service companies, you are playing with their livelihood. Okay. And respect that responsibility and make sure you know your craft before you start selling that service. Okay. So that part is the other piece of the equation that when I see some of this work put out that has no chance of actually moving the needle forward for that company. And they don't know because that's not their business to know. The owner doesn't know because they're in the business of heating and air conditioning. They're not in the business of branding and who they hired. Those folks are the ones that are supposed to know this stuff, right? So,
well, there's a differential between people who don't know what they're doing that work in the industry, and like people who are trying to hack at it, who really like a business owner that just like said, well, I'll slap this on, I'll get it over to my marketing company, they'll make a wrap, and end a story. But I think every industry has that. Okay. I every industry, dude, you know how many times I walk into a house where I lose a bid or something like that, and I lose a quote, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're going with such and such, and it costs X amount of dollars," and I'm like, "It's not going to work.
Right.
It won't work. I know. I know it won't work. I'll tell you." And I'd even go as far as to say, "I'll tell you what. I'll even give you your money back if you know what I mean. Like if my solution doesn't work." It happens in every single field. What I think separates you and I think a lot of other people that are successful at what they do is actually that passion in every facet of what you do. So I'm glad you're out there. I'm glad you're fighting the good fight. I think it's rare that you find somebody who's so good at something that, when they speak, you can pretty much argue with like about anything these days, right? You can argue about people who are experts in any field, but like, I don't think anybody can argue with the success that you've had with your brands, which is like super cool.
Thank you.
I think it's good to be noted.
Appreciate that.
What's the toughest, what's the toughest thing you've ever had to kind of overcome though, when trying to build your business up? Like, what have you, what was the biggest stumbling block you ever ran into?
I think me. I think I was the biggest stumbling block, and it took nearly dying for me to understand that. So I think that I had an issue with my heart. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm grateful to be alive. I had a doctor, a second opinion that basically saved my life, and they said, "Dude, you would be dead. Like you should be dead." And going through that process, I really learned how amazing my team was. I mean, I knew they were amazing, but I didn't let them lead the way that they could have been leading, because I had my hands in too many things. I had my hands in things that I wasn't good at. I was part of too many decisions that I should have never been. And so I let go of so much responsibility after that. And I promoted someone to run operations, and she just crushed it, and she continues to crush it for me. And just to give you an example, Everett, right? So you look, so from 1995 until 2021, it had taken us at that point 26 years to get to like $4.5 million in revenue, right? So that's the journey. And then 2021 to 2024, we went to 10 million in revenue. So what happened, right? So I got out of my own way as part of what happened. I let these leaders that I had hired that were so amazing help run the company, and let me focus on the things that I'm most passionate about. Like, I'm not passionate about accounting. I know the books, I know the KPIs, I understand numbers, and I'm very astute when it comes to the financial well-being of the company. But I hate dealing with taxes. I hate dealing with payroll. I hate dealing with HR. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I want to sit in my office and I want to look at brands, and I want to figure out ways to make them better. And so I wasn't even as happy as I am now, because I wasn't able to do the things I was most passionate about as much. So that whole experience was great. That's actually why I'm sitting in this shore house, right? Because I came home from the hospital and I said to my wife, we almost didn't have the time that we thought we were going to have to do all these things that we said we would do later. We said, oh, we can get that shore house later. Like, we got to wait to do some of these things. We shouldn't do that now, but we've have all this time. And then we literally almost had no time, so I think that experience, going through that was just, an amazing opportunity for me to shift a lot of my mindset, to shift my mindset way more towards the notion of gratitude, like every freaking day. I think I'm 1,462 days since my surgery, and I keep that number in my mind because those are all bonus days. I should have had none of those days. So just really grateful for just being here and the second chance, essentially.
Tell us about this book here, Branded Not Blanded.
So why do you write a book, right? Well, you write a book because you've got all this knowledge in your mind, and you continue to see so many home service owners struggling with the notion of brand. You see so many home service company owners struggle with how to even name their company when they started from day one. And I thought to myself, wow, if I could put this book in people's hands that are even considering starting their company, and they read this before they even named it, it would save so much heartache, so much wasted marketing dollars down the road. And so I put everything I basically knew about branding for the last 30 years, I put it in a book, and I'm actually working on a second edition right now where I'm updating with a lot more data. Like, you spoke a little bit about data early on, or you spoke a little bit about some KPIs, about, increases in revenue and increases in average tickets and booking rates and close rates and all those other things. And so we have a lot more of that data to support the notion of how critical the brand is. And like you said too, I want people to understand that too. Like you said it perfectly. You said, well, it's not just the brand, it's not just the logo. And I agree with that. But a lot of times we do work for companies that are well run to begin with. They just don't look like they're well run.
Well, yeah. So you can hunt and you can farm. And I've had this conversation strategically a lot of the time where it's like, okay, so you can go out there and you can continuously try to like hunt for, leads. I need my next lead, I need my next lead, I need my next lead in any industry. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I will say it is definitely carrying a brand. And I'll give you a great example of this. Okay. we here in Dallas, okay, I ran the branch here for ARS, and they about 70% of the business here is comes through Home Depot because they don't have a brand presence here. There's other markets that ARS is a huge, humongous market. It's not here. But so there's a tremendous amount of Home Depot and Lowe's business. So it's very interesting. Like why? Because people have a tendency, right, to flock to these brands that they recognize, that they know. Obviously, there's got to be something behind it. But in the last, I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, the branding has become, I think it's even exponentially more important. Whereas I think before you could really get along and get away with really just hunting for leads. Like I really do. I think, and you became a neighborhood name, and like you became big by default, and you kind of, right, like you did business in a neighborhood. And I think Mike Gugliaro said this to me, and he said, a lot of people, they build their businesses and they built them by default.
Sure.
They were around for 30, 40 years. They were the neighborhood guy, and then they got a couple more trucks and a couple more trucks and a couple more trucks, and it took 35 years and they got there. But he built that gold medal brand, which I don't think you were a part of, but he built that gold medal brand. And he built it over the course of like 7, 8 years, and absolutely crushed it. And it was exactly by that thought process, by that design. So I think we're echoing a lot of the same thing. I'd be interested to ask, what is what's one experience? And I ask this on every episode. I'm really interested about yours because you've had so many experiences with business owners over the years. But what is one experience that you've had that shapes you, that lives with you, that everywhere you go, you sort of wear it like a backpack, and you carry it with you into your other experiences in life?
I'm blessed that there's a lot of really good examples, but the one that I think is one of the most meaningful ones to me, and I mentioned a little bit earlier, that was the rebranding of PMA Comfort to Grasshopper for Amanda August. And it's significant for a number of reasons, but like I said, when she came to me and asked me to rebrand her, and I initially turned her down because I knew what she was asking, or what she wanted me to do wouldn't work. Then she came back and she said, "Okay, I'm ready." And I said, "Okay, good." This was during COVID. So during COVID, when Cuomo shut down all of the commercial construction projects, she was left with no work. So they had less than 100,000 in residential sales, and they were primarily doing commercial. And so we came up with the name Grasshopper. We came up with the story behind Grasshopper, because grasshoppers can only move forward. And then the tagline, "Forward is a way of life."
Forward is a way of life. Yeah. Now, did you come up with that with her, or did you come up with that?
So we figured out early on about the notion that grasshoppers can only move forward. And then she circled around the notion of forward is a way of life. So that was really more on her than it was on us. But when we came up with the idea of grasshoppers, and we found out all these cool things that grasshoppers did, we found out they can't go backwards. And I'm like, well, that's actually pretty interesting.
I want to point out something here, which is so interesting. I know you've said this to people, right? Grasshoppers have nothing to do with heating and cooling. Moving forward as a way of life has nothing to do with heating and cooling. Moving forward as a grasshopper has nothing to do with heating and cooling. The grasshopper itself has nothing to do with it. Nothing that you branded has anything to do with heating and cooling. But what it does talk about is, and I see this, I'm sure when they step in the house, like, hey, that's interesting. Like, what does that all mean? Well, we're a great team here. We work for each other. We're moving forward. Let's move forward. It's just a cool philosophy. I love that.
And it not only speaks to the people you're serving, it speaks to your internal audience as well. So if you're an employee, you understand what that means to you. But when she came to me, I didn't know this at the time, but it was like the last $25,000 she had. And I didn't know that. Like, I found that out later, that if this didn't work, she was done. Like, that was it. And I got to, I mean, obviously she's crushing it. I think they're at almost 30 million in revenue at this point. So that's 4 years later. So from 100,000 to almost 30 million in revenue is just an amazing accomplishment. She's an amazing leader.
Oh, she built a culture.
Well,
that's
absolutely.
the difference. She built a culture. Yeah, she built a
Right.
culture
You
and
know,
a brand. And she built the brand and she
and
built
I
the
got, she
culture.
invited me to go there for their 3-year anniversary party. Last year I went with a couple people on my team, and you got to go into this party that she organized, and it was a really cool bash. And there's 50 or 60 employees there, and every one of those people had lives that were impacted by our work, and she is just the embodiment of our why. So when we say design as if lives were at stake, that's what we're talking about. And we got to go and see all these people share their enthusiasm for working for Amanda. And that's when you say, well, what if I fucked that up? What if I didn't do that job well? Like, does all this stuff happen?
What if the grasshopper failed,
Yeah.
man? What if it
Does all this stuff still
yeah.
happen, or does it not? And I can't take credit for what she built, because she built that herself. But I know I played a role. I know it was significant in the journey. And so being able to see that, like, that still stays with me, because and that's what we continue to preach for every single employee we have. Your work changes lives, and respect that responsibility that you have to each and every client. Like, that's what we live by, and making sure they know. And we also do such a good job too, ever, to making sure we continue to communicate that to the people who aren't on the front lines, who don't get to interact with that owner, who don't see them at a trade show or hear them on a podcast. So we're always continually sharing with them the results. Hey, look at this amazing, picture of all these people that now work at the company that we did this brand for last year. Remember, they were struggling. They were at only this much in revenue. They had 3 employees. Now they've got 30. So making sure that they continue to understand and see the fruits of their labor. And that's why a lot of them work for us too. Like, we have so many people that used to work for big ad agencies doing work for like Verizon, and they were like, we never saw an impact in our work. If Verizon sold more cell phones, it didn't mean anything to me. Like, there wasn't any meaning behind my work. And so I think that's what a lot of people love about KickCharge and what we do.
I was thinking while you were talking about the fact that she's not really in a big
Yeah,
market.
she's
It's
Albany.
right? I was just thinking about that, and I'm almost wondering, like, and I think somebody asked me this, like, if you're opening up an HVAC or a home services company and you're in like Columbus, Ohio, or Albany, or like a secondary market, like not one of the major markets, I almost wonder if you're better positioned for success, right? Like less saturation. What are
I
your
mean,
thoughts on
sometimes
that?
that's really true, because you're in a market with a lot of complacent owners, and they've been doing things the same way for a long time. Like, oh my God, like almost every single competitor when she first opened told her she would never make it. And I think that was a mistake on their part, because I think it just fueled her even more. But I think you're right. Certain markets are more astute to branding. They've embraced it more than other markets. But you do see markets like that where there is not a well-branded company in the entire market. You see it a lot in New England, especially. For some strange reason, New England, as a general statement, there aren't a lot of well-branded companies in that neck of the woods, even Connecticut. And we could look on the map and we could see how many jobs in brands we've created in some of these states, and you just don't see that as prevalent as, let's say, Orange County, California, where there's a lot of people who are well branded, or Las Vegas is a lot of people, Florida.
Yeah. So that's another question. So, I'm in the most expensive Metroplex like HVAC home service in general. It's pay-per-click. It's the
Yeah,
most expensive in
yeah.
the country. So it's super saturated. What do you do then? How do you stand out in a market that has, like, whether it's you did it or somebody else did it that's really good at this, where you've got like a bunch of really big brand names, like you've got, your big groups, your branch groups, whatever it is. What do you
I,
do
I,
then?
I
How do you
I
stand
think
out
I think
then?
sometimes there's two things about what you're saying there. You have companies that are really, really huge that are still poorly branded, and there's a lot of those companies. So then you start looking at it from that perspective and saying, well, what can I be doing? Because my marketing dollars will not go nearly as far as they can. They can outspend me every day of the week on Google AdWords and paid clicks. And some of them need to outspend you because they've got shitty branding. Even though they're big, they're just not well remembered, right? So they spend their way out of that particular issue. So again, what can you do to develop a brand that lives in someone's mind, that's sticky, that's disruptive, that feels unique in that particular market? And that's market driven. So you have to look at each market and say, what are the top 10 companies doing that I'm going to be competing against, and look at their brands, look at the strategies that are already being deployed, and say, how do I do something that feels like that purple cow in this particular market, right? And everyone, I assume a lot of people have read the book Purple Cow, but it basically is talking about the notion of disruption. It's talking about the notion of how do we stand out? How do we become sticky? So you have to research that market. That's why it's interesting sometimes, because people like, if you post something in an HVAC owners group about your new logo that you just did, and let's say it has a mascot, you'll get all this hate from guys saying, "Oh, mascots are overplayed. I see mascots all the time," and they're saying that because they're watching what HVAC branding looks like from that vantage point. But in most markets, that doesn't actually happen. That's not actually happening in most markets, right? So it is kind of interesting too, because that it's sort of called cognitive dissonance, where you just see something over and over again and you think everyone's doing it, and it's actually not true at all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny sometimes too when
Yeah.
people, hate on some of these different branding approaches. And they also hate on it sometimes too, because they're thinking about it from their own perspective. Like, I hate mascots. Okay, dude, you hate mascots. Cool. You know who loves mascots? Mrs. Jones. She's the one buying the heating and air conditioning equipment. She's the one making the first phone call.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter that you hate it.
So are you saying that there's a way, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you want to stand out in a market. So are you going and saying, okay, look, this is Tucson, Arizona. Okay. And here's what our competitors are doing. And like, here's what your value added proposition is. Here's the history of the company. Okay. And then like, I'm thinking there's gotta be like, even like, just when you see a cool ad on TV, right? Like you see something different, right? Something stand out. Are you guys thinking about that? Like thinking about like, okay, like, but could that be temporary? Like, is that like, oh, well, or is it like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you develop a really cool brand strategy for today. And then, is there a situation where you've seen it not work in 5 years down the line, or you think maybe it becomes dated, or it becomes whatever 5 years down the line?
I think you're always thinking about how to lay the foundation for a larger brand story. You're trying to think about what will have legs, what will not only communicate to the people you're selling to, but your internal audience as well. So you're always looking at it from that perspective about how do I create something that has a good shelf life, right? That's not flavor of the month. Okay, that's the other piece, right? That's not something that's popular now and then in 2 years is going to look super dated. So we try to avoid that kind of notion as well when it comes to branding. But again, you want to look at the market, and the market will dictate in a lot of instances what's going to work really well and what's not going to work well. Like, if you're in a market and there are 10 mascots, well, putting out the 11th isn't going to be super disruptive. Even if the other 10 mascots are shitty, it's still going to be a little bit harder to gain traction. So you always want to think about the notion of what can I own? What can I, even colors, like colors are so critical. Like, what colors are not being used? Like, I can't use orange in the Philadelphia market because of Horizon. Like, you just can't. Like, you're not going to own orange in Philly. You're just not, right? So certain markets, there's,
unless you get people confused, you do a little subterfuge, you
Yeah.
confuse people, you name it like horoscope, and like, oh, are you guys
Yeah.
There's people that do that, man. There's people that will just take your idea and then kind of move it a little bit, and then
So all that research you have to do first before you even think about the best disruption that you can create, the best strategy that you can create that will be unique.
Can you say the most fun? Are you like, I feel bad. Like, I'm trying to ask you about certain brands, and I know you have so many customers, 2,000, 3,000 brands you've made, but is there one that sticks out that was like the most fun? You obviously talked about Grass Hire being the most impactful for you personally, but was there one that was the most fun for you?
I mean, we have a lot of really fun brands. I think the one that we did for this amazing husband and wife team out of California called McAwesome, and it features McCall.
Oh, I follow them on
Main,
social media. I didn't
he's
even
a
know
good
who they
guy.
were. And then they kept popping up on my screen doing these really cool videos on like
Yeah,
TikTok,
and
Instagram, whatever it was.
his
Yeah.
previous company was called My Air Systems, and it was a white van with, you know, a clip art house with the sun and the snowflakes, and you know, even at his revenue size, he was small at the time, or smaller. He was like around 300 or 400 in revenue, and he went all in it. You know, new name, new brand, truck wraps, uniforms, a bunch of collateral we created for him. But the macaw was deliberate because he came from South America, and they had macaws from where he was from, and he said, "Hey, if there's a way that you can bring something about where I came from that's meaningful to me into this
Yeah.
brand, that would be amazing." And so we came up with the name McCawsome, and he was doing a lot of work for warranty companies, and he was desperate to get out of that. I mean, you know how shitty that is to be doing warranty work. It's the worst possible work to be doing.
Yeah.
And you know, I spoke to him the other day, and I think they're almost at 2 million in revenue, and I'm super excited for him. And he made,
That's so funny that of all the companies, that's one I
yeah,
actually follow. I follow obviously, like, you know, through the page, like people follow me all the time, but then it clicked because I would watch their
they're
videos
good,
because they're
right?
actually pretty
Yeah,
cool.
they're
McCall.
good, and he's such a
Yeah, it's
good
cool.
guy, and his wife, his family,
Oh, I'll
and again,
bet.
that's again, they're my why, right? Here's you know, two people. It was a big investment for them to go all in on this with me, and to trust us with that responsibility. And so we wanted to make sure, like we do for every single client, that we had something that was really going to work well. And you mentioned earlier too, when you talk about the how competitive your market is on paid clicks and things like that, and you see the escalation of the cost of paid advertising on Google, right? So that is part of the other strategy is how do we build a brand that can become that 5 mile famous so that they remember the name instead of relying on Google to deliver the name. And I think that's
Yeah, and then they just go to Google and find you on organic, and then you're not paying
exactly.
$250 a
So
click or
Google
whatever it
has
is.
made
Yeah.
it so challenging to use that medium effectively right now because it's so competitive. Like you
Yeah.
said, like 5, 6 years ago, it wasn't nearly as bad as it is today. So the notion of not only the effective truck wrap and the branding, but if you've watched their videos, you see the effort that they're putting into becoming visible in the community. They go to home shows, they go to community events. They're out there. They're in front of the people they are serving. They're not just hiding behind a keyboard throwing money at Google, right? So that investment in becoming that 5 mile famous is a really, really critical point and part of the story. And it's also just something that you don't see PE investing in. You don't see some of these bigger companies investing in. And so what can you do as a little guy to be competitive is become visible. You know, how much does it cost to sponsor the soccer team? Like seriously, those are like 15 kids that they're, you know,
We were just talking about that today in my networking
yeah,
group, like small
you
things that
know,
you can
those
do.
15
Yeah.
kids, you think their parents are going somewhere else for HVAC if you sponsor their kids' little league or their soccer teams? Like, come on, you know, or being in a parade and having your branded truck pulling a trailer and you're throwing out candy to everyone on the parade. You know, think about the captive audience. And this is why being generic sucks. It's not going to help you if you're driving down in a white van. They're never going to remember you, right? Do you think they're going to forget the macaw and how brightly colored everything is?
Dude, those sparkly guys caught my attention. And you want to know something crazy? The sparkle cleaning,
Sparkle. Yep.
right? And so I rolled up. Obviously, you know, I work for Ken Goodrich now.
I actually
You knew
didn't know
that,
that.
right?
Awesome.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I'm one of the founding, I guess not founding, but one of the first employees of
Excellent.
Kenerator. So he opened up a branch here in Dallas, and they, you know, had to put some pieces together. And so anyway, I'm wearing a bunch of hats, and it's really cool, and it's been really great. And we've got a great team. We're working on a lot of things. We got a branch in Houston, we got a branch in Tampa, and we're really moving forward. And the generator business is really interesting. There's a lot of moving pieces, but it's a challenge. It's a good challenge. It's refreshing. It's really good. I roll up to this. I'm running a call, right? And I'm rolling up to this house, and I see this sparkle truck, And I'm like, that's got to be Dan's. I'm like looking at it, right? Earlier that day, I had seen another truck with like some kind of like cartoony logo thing, and I posted it on like Facebook, and I was like, Dan, is this yours? And you're like, no, that's not mine. And I was like, wait a minute. I rolled up to the house, and I'm like, I see this Sparkle cleaning people. And let me tell you something.
Yes.
It's a franchise. Those people are out there. They were like whoop, 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 like clean. I mean, it was crazy that all the special machinery that was like cleaning all the windows, the screens, everything. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Well, guess what? And this is my own psychological mind, because I never saw that before. Later on, like a couple days later, I saw another one of those Sparkle trucks in a whole nother section of town. And I was like, oh, that's just crazy. But yeah, if anybody checks out
Sparkle Squad. Yeah.
Sparkle Squad. Yeah. If anybody checks out Sparkle Squad, very, very cool. I very much I like the logo, man. It pops, it's great, and your branding's fantastic, man. I get a kick out of it. I think it's truly impactful. Dan, before we had just good conversation. Before we wrap up here, what are you working on? What do you want? You want to send anybody places? Should they be buying your old book, your new book? Plug something.
Sure. Like the biggest thing that's happened for KickCharge this year is we acquired Leverage Marketing in January. So that's a full service digital marketing company. So now we have that under one roof under KickCharge. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, wow. So you're going to compete with the big guys. You're going to compete with the Scorpions and the Rhinos and all the other
so
companies.
We got an amazing team. That was the one piece that was always missing from the brand strategy portion, is the digital marketing. And so we wanted to partner up with the best, and Ryan Redding, who runs the digital marketing now for us, he stayed on, obviously, and it's been awesome.
Nice.
So we're super excited about that. That now literally everything under one roof. You don't have to go anywhere else, and everything is going to be on brand.
Oh wow! So it's kind of seamless. Come through for branding and go right through to digital marketing.
Yeah,
how's it
it's
going?
awesome. We have a couple launching really soon that are the first ones to go through the entire process, soup to nuts. And it's one of the companies. It's just an amazing brand, and the website that we just finished, it's next level. Like, so I'm really excited about it, because now not only the visuals, the digital, the voice, because we're writing all the branded content for it. Like, everything is going to be on brand.
Commercials, radio ads, all that stuff.
Yeah,
like
we're not
whatever.
doing the commercials in the radio. And by the way, Ken's commercial is just next level. It's just for the Kenerator. It's unbelievable. It's so good. Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
That's awesome to work with him, though. That's exciting. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm siloed here in Dallas. While we got people in different like spots flying around and everything else. But yeah, it is cool. All right, so you got Leverage Marketing, and then you have another book coming out.
I mean, the second edition won't be out probably until September. I'm just trying to plan it around when the fall home show starts.
Yeah, show season, baby.
We'll be at Tommy's Home Service Freedom in September. We'll be at Pantheon in September also. So it'll be done before then. But I'm excited for it. Like I said, just a lot more content we're adding to it. A lot more data is the biggest component that I'm adding to, which I think will just make it even more impactful. But I appreciate all the support for people who have read it. It's got so many really great reviews, and just reading the reviews on Amazon, what people say about the impact the book has had on them. And that's why you write it. I mean, you don't write books to get rich. Like, I literally make like $4 on each book.
How many books have you sold? A million?
No, not a million. I think I don't know, 4,000, 5,000, something like that. It's not a lot, but
I gotta. You know what? Here's what I want.
You don't have my book?
Okay. No, listen to me. I need a signed copy. I want to put it right back here. Okay. Signed copy right back there. I'll pay for the shipping.
I got you, man. I'll hook you up.
Jason McCone says, to quote Charles Barkley, feed is terrible. Cool. Well, I appreciate you, man. All right. So, seriously, thank you so much for coming on. I think it was actually, and you know what? I promise everybody, it's so funny. I always love to talk about the human side of what we do, but like the behind the scenes and all this other stuff. And, but like your journey is so much entrenched. Like you said, when you were like a kid, and then you would, you would skip going out with your friends just so you could stencil, right? So like your whole journey, your whole life is this. So it's not like I can ask you questions that are like this is your life. So this is what I was in this house. Well, you're in everybody's house, you know. Getting my brand done soon with Kick Charge Leapfrog Roofing. Garrett Becker.
Can't wait, Garrett. It's gonna be a good one. It's a great name.
Good stuff. Really great stuff. Really appreciated this conversation. I was supposed to actually meet with Joe Crisera earlier this week, and unfortunately he had to reschedule. So that was unfortunate, but I'm going to get him back on the schedule. Jim Clouk says, great stuff, gentlemen. Really appreciate that. Thanks for sticking around. Coming up, guys, I have a controversial episode, sort of, almost, maybe, but not really. Okay. I have, well, okay. So, you tell them, is it controversial? Is it not? I don't know. Okay. So on Tuesday, I have Gene Slade coming on. Gene Slade is, a national trainer. He's done all sorts of stuff. Some people absolutely love him. Some people absolutely hate him. If you ever go to HVAC for Life or HVAC Technician Group, you have people making stitches of high quality mixed videos with Gene Slade in like sequin jeans. It is crazy. So it is kind of funny. So yeah. So Tuesday we're going to do that live. And I've been doing these live. I have some recorded, but I've been doing a lot of these live. I think the interaction's cool when we get it. But Gene Slade's coming on the 22nd. Then I have Rachel Martins, who's on the 24th. That episode was actually scheduled right after HVAC Tactical event. She's the HVAC Lady of the Trade. She won an award for best woman in the trade. She's fantastic. She does a lot of cool HVAC stuff on Instagram. She's got a lot of followers and whatnot. And then on the 29th, Josh Teakle, the owner of Smart AC, is going to be on. And yeah, John, he is such a smart cat. Like, he's so interesting to talk to, and he's like next level. So I really love my conversations with him. So really excited about that, Dan, dude. Thank you so much. I wish the best for Kick Charge. I literally wish the best for Leverage Marketing, for your book. Check it out, and we will.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man. Grateful.